November in Boston always had this way of biting through your coat, no matter how thick it was. The wind didn't just whistle, it spoke. Usually, I found it annoying, but that morning, I stood by the hospital window just watching leaves swirl like they had somewhere to be. Lena, room 204 is ready for discharge. I turned around, smiled at Carla, our floor coordinator, and grabbed the chart from the nurse's station. On it. I took a breath and shook off the chill. Room 204 was my last patient of the day. A mother with her son, both glowing with relief. The little boy had been in for pneumonia, scary for someone that small. "Thank you, Miss Holloway. You really took care of my boy," the mom said, clutching her son's tiny hand. I knelt beside him and ruffled his hair. "Liam, you've been so brave. You keep taking your meds like we talked about?" He nodded, shy but proud. "That's why I do this job. It's not the paycheck, it's these moments." After 7 years at Hillside General, my title may not have changed, but the way people trusted me, that was my real promotion. Once they left, I checked my watch. 1 more hour. Then I could pick up my son, Eli, from daycare. He's 10 months old and has the brightest eyes I've ever seen. Thinking about his gummy smile always made me forget how tired I was. "Lena," Dr. Halston called. "He said he needs to talk about Thanksgiving plans," Carla said. I froze. Of course he did. My ex-husband, the pediatric surgeon who could recite medical journals like bedtime stories, but couldn't remember to show up to our son's first checkup. 2 years ago, I left Andrew Halston, and with that decision came a full-on life makeover I didn't know I needed. We used to joke about being a power couple in Scrubs. Turns out, only one of us cared about being a couple. The other just wanted the power. I thought having a baby would bring us closer. It didn't. While I was prepping a nursery, he was prepping keynote speeches. When I went into labor, he was across the country presenting on rare pediatric anomalies. 6 hours after our son was born, he strolled in like he hadn't missed the most important moment of our lives. We grew apart not because of hate, but because of priorities. Mine were Eli. His were elsewhere. Our divorce was civil. Too civil, if you ask me. No courtroom drama, no fights over custody. Just a quiet, polite "we tried." My family, however, didn't take it so lightly. My parents, Stephen and Barbara, practically mourned the breakup like a death, and not mine, Andrew's. To them, he was the dream son-in-law. Rich, respected, refined, basically everything they ever wanted in a son and everything they wished I had been. "Why'd you throw it all away, Lena?" my mom asked during every single holiday I skipped after the divorce. My brother Josh and his wife Lauren didn't hide their judgment either. Josh even joked once that Eli should carry Andrew's last name. He was kidding. I wasn't laughing. So yeah, family gatherings became complicated. But this year I decided I'd show up. It wasn't just about the food or even making peace. I had something else planned, something big. Under my bed was a thick envelope. Inside it, a surprise they'd never expect. Part of the financial settlement from Andrew, earmarked not for me, but for the people who needed to learn what real love looked like. The day before Thanksgiving, I baked 2 pies, one store-bought for backup, and one from scratch, because my mother always said, "Homemade touches the soul." I dressed Eli in his tiny sweater, packed his diaper bag, and slipped the envelope into my coat pocket. "You ready to see Grandma and Grandpa?" I asked Eli as he giggled from his car seat. Driving through the old neighborhood felt like moving through a memory I hadn't signed up to revisit. Our old red brick house sat at the end of a curved street, just like I remembered. Lights were on. Laughter echoed from the open windows. I parked. My heart pounded. Holding Eli with one arm and the pie in the other, I walked up the garden path. Leaves crunched under my boots. I reached the porch, and that's when I saw it. A sign, handwritten, taped to the door. "Family dinner, no single mothers allowed." I stared at it for a full minute, waiting for my brain to catch up. This had to be a mistake, a prank, some kid's idea of edgy humor. But the laughter inside? It was real. So were the silhouettes in the window. My father reading by the fireplace. My mom bringing out the casserole. Josh laughing at something his wife said. The perfect Thanksgiving picture. Except it didn't have me in it. Or my son. I felt heat rush to my face. Humiliation. Rage. And sadness so sharp it felt like a knife. Eli stirred in my arms. His sleepy face calmed me more than any deep breath ever could. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. I stood there for another moment, debating. Knock? Leave? Cry? Then I made a decision. I took out the envelope, attached a note. I thought we could be a real family. "This is my last gift." I placed the envelope gently on the doormat, balanced the pie beside it, kissed Eli's forehead, and turned around. No door knocking, no drama, just dignity. Each step back to the car felt like shedding something old. I buckled Eli into his seat, slid into the driver's side, and finally let the tears come. But they weren't just tears of pain. They were cleansing. "We'll be okay, Eli," I whispered as the engine turned over. "We've got everything we need." The house disappeared in my rear view. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something real. Freedom. The next morning, the sun filtered through the curtains in my apartment like nothing had happened. As if yesterday hadn't cracked something in me that I didn't even know was still intact. Eli was up before me, babbling to his stuffed bunny from the crib like he was narrating a dream. I dragged myself out of bed, still feeling the weight of that sign on the door like it was stitched to my chest. "Morning, little man," I murmured, picking him up. He clung to me with warm, chubby arms. That was the thing about babies, they didn't ask questions. They just loved you. No conditions, no caveats. I brewed coffee, toast popped up from the old toaster, and Eli sat in his high chair nibbling banana slices while I tried to make sense of yesterday. I couldn't stop seeing the words on that sign, scrawled like a slap in Sharpie. The first hadn't expected a welcome party, but I didn't expect that either. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Every part of me wanted to hit decline, but something in me, maybe spite, maybe curiosity, made me swipe accept. "Lena." My mother's voice came through, shaky, not her usual composed tone. In the background, I could hear voices, raised, frantic. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously. Her words came in pieces. "What you left on the porch? Was that real?" I sat down. My heart thudded. They opened the envelope. "What are you talking about?" I asked, even though I already knew. The letter, the documents. Lena, the house loan payoff, the vacation package, the tickets. "What is all that? I told you in the note it was a gift. My last one." There was silence, and then, not hers, but a man's voice in the background. "Why the hell would she do that after everything?" "Dad, I think it's ruined," my mother whispered. "Everything's torn." Someone shredded it. My chest went still. Of course. It wasn't enough to exclude me. Someone had to destroy what I brought. "You shredded it?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "No, I didn't." "I swear," she cried. When I found it, it was already in pieces. We thought maybe it was a prank. Or something fake. Then Greg said. I stiffened. Greg said what? Suddenly, another voice came on the line. "My brother." "Lena," he said flatly. "I did it. I didn't say anything. I tore it all up." "Why?" He paused. "Because I was angry. And yeah, maybe jealous." I stood up, pacing now, trying to stay grounded. "You were jealous," I repeated. "So you decided to trash the one thing I tried to do for the whole family?" He sighed. "You show up after skipping every holiday for 2 years? Acting like you're above all of us. With your fancy pie and your grand surprise, we were fine without you." "You were fine without me," I said, biting the words. "Greg, you put up a sign that said no single mothers allowed. You made it very clear how fine you were." "That was supposed to be a joke. It wasn't funny," I snapped. "Not to me. Not to Eli. You knew I was coming. You let me walk away carrying my son thinking I wasn't welcome. You let me believe no one wanted us there." There was silence again. Then, finally, Greg's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd take it that way. You meant it that way." A longer pause. Then Dad's voice again, muffled but firm. "Greg, that envelope wasn't a prank. It was everything Lena saved." Then Mom again. "Lena, we didn't know. We were waiting for you. We thought you weren't coming." "We didn't know Greg put that sign up until this morning." My stomach twisted. "Yesterday, I stood on that porch, freezing, holding Eli and a damn pie, and I read that sign while you laughed inside. None of you thought to call? Not even once?" "I was about to," Mom said weakly. "I swear I was about to." "But you didn't." I leaned against the counter, watching Eli pick at his toast with chubby fingers. He was humming to himself, totally untouched by this chaos. Thank God. You want to know what was in that envelope? I said quietly. Neither of them spoke, so I went on. It was proof I paid off your mortgage. I used some of the money Andrew gave me in the settlement. I didn't need it all, and I knew things were tight for you both, even if you'd never admit it. I swallowed hard. There were also 5 tickets for a cruise around the world. For you, for Dad, for Josh's kids. It was everything you used to say you dreamed of. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd see that I still love this family even if I'm not doing it your way. A soft sob slipped through the line. Oh, Lena. But it's okay, I said, and I meant it. You don't have to accept the gift. Honestly, you never did. It wasn't about the money. Then what was it about? Greg asked, still sounding bitter. Respect, I answered. For me, for Eli, for the choices I made when no one else supported me. I could hear someone pacing in the background. Then Dad spoke again. Lena, I don't know what to say. Say nothing, I said. Just understand. That sign, that was a line I didn't draw. But I won't pretend it wasn't there. Another silence. Then Mom spoke. We were wrong. I was wrong. I miss you, Lena. We all do, I exhaled. Not from relief, from exhaustion. I miss you too, I said. But missing me means accepting me. I do. You'll need to show me, not just say it. Okay, she said, her voice cracking. We will, I promise. I hung up, placed the phone on the counter, and slid to the floor. Eli giggled at something on the floor. Probably a Cheerio. His world was safe and soft. Mine felt like it was balancing on a needle. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. The rest of that morning passed in quiet stillness. I didn't return any more calls. I didn't check texts. I just sat there with Eli, watching snow gather on the window panes like little secrets the sky was trying to keep. The apartment smelled like leftover pie and warm baby lotion. After a while, I stopped thinking about the call. Not because I didn't care, but because caring too hard for too long is exhausting. There's a limit to how many times you can turn pain over in your hands before you decide to just set it down. I bundled Eli up and took him to the park. We didn't stay long, just long enough for him to stick his mittened hands into fresh snow and laugh when it melted on contact. That sound, his laugh, it resets something in me every time. Back at the apartment, Eli went down for his afternoon nap without protest. I curled up in the chair by the window, knitting needles in hand, working on a tiny sweater. I had started a week ago. Deep forest green. His color. Something about the act of knitting loop by loop reminds me that some things, at least, can be put together again. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing a row. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set down the needles, tiptoed over to the door, and peered through the peephole. My breath caught. There they were, my entire family. My father, coat dusted with snow, stood at the front, his shoulders hunched in a way I'd never seen. My mother was next to him, red-eyed, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. Greg and Lauren were behind them. No kids, just 4 grown adults, faces pulled tight with something between remorse and uncertainty. I didn't move at first, I just stared at them. Then I opened the door. No one said anything right away. The wind howled down the hallway behind them like it was trying to fill the silence. Can we come in? My father asked, his voice softer than I remembered it ever being. I stepped aside. One by one, they entered. Each of them passed me without meeting my eyes. The only one who paused was my mother. She reached out, hesitated, and then dropped her hand again. I led them to the living room. No one sat until I did. I wasn't expecting guests, I said, not coldly, just honestly. My mom set the casserole on the coffee table. We didn't want to wait. We needed to see you. I nodded. My throat felt dry. My dad cleared his throat. I've been thinking about what you said, about respect, about Eli, about the sign. He swallowed. I want to say I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I shouldn't have needed a wake-up call in the form of a torn-up envelope. I looked at him. This was a man who used to call crying a waste of strength. Hearing him admit fault? It was like watching a glacier melt. I didn't raise you to be unkind, he went on. But somehow, when things didn't go the way I imagined, I forgot how to be kind to you. My mother chimed in. Her voice cracked like thin ice. I wanted to believe everything would just fix itself if we stayed quiet long enough. That if I kept the peace, it would all work out. But that wasn't peace. That was cowardice. I sat back in my chair, arms folded. I didn't interrupt. I didn't forgive. Not yet. I just listened. Then Greg spoke. His voice was tight. The sign, the shredding, that was me. All me. He looked up at me for the first time. I didn't think about Eli. I didn't think about how that would land. I was being petty, Lena, and insecure. You've always had your life together, even when it fell apart. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think this is? Me having it together? I mean, he glanced around the apartment. You're doing it alone. That's not nothing, I sighed. It's not about having it together. It's about holding it together long enough to show up for my kid. Even when no one showed up for me, they all fell silent again. From the bedroom, Eli stirred, a soft wail. I stood without a word and went to get him. When I came back, holding him in my arms, the room changed. My mother reached out without asking this time. May I? I hesitated, then nodded. She took him carefully, like she was holding something sacred. He looks like you, she whispered. But his eyes, those are Andrew's. My dad stood close. He touched Eli's tiny hand. The baby clutched his finger without hesitation. This is our grandson, my father said, as if just realizing it. And we've missed too much already. I watched them. Something inside me, something frozen and pushed aside for too long, started to thaw. I'm not asking you to apologize every day, I said, but I need you to show up. If you want to be part of his life. If you want to be part of mine, it can't be halfway. Greg stood too. Can we start over? Slowly? I'll earn it, I swear. I won't forget what you did, I said. I know, but I hope you'll let me do something different now. Eli laughed, right in the middle of that heavy moment, and it broke the tension like sunlight breaking through clouds. I looked at them all, my broken, flawed, finally aware family, and I nodded. We'll try. The next morning, I woke up to Eli tugging on my hair, babbling with that wide-mouthed grin like he knew something good had happened. And maybe he did. The apartment felt lighter somehow, like the tension that had camped in every corner finally folded its tent and left. I stood in the kitchen, spooning oatmeal into a bowl while coffee brewed, and let the quiet settle. Last night had been strange, not bad, not easy, but honest. For once, we weren't pretending. After my family left, I didn't cry. I just sat on the couch for a long time with Eli sleeping on my chest, thinking about how different things could have been if they'd seen me clearly from the start. If they'd treated me like more than a shadow of my ex-husband's ambition. But we were past the what-if part now. It was time to move forward. Later that day, I bundled Eli up again, this time to visit my parents. An informal invitation, nothing like the tension-filled holidays we used to plan 2 weeks in advance. Just to come by if you feel ready from my mom, said in the gentlest voice I've ever heard her use. The house looked the same as always. But this time, when I pulled into the driveway, there was no sign on the door, just a wreath made of dried cranberries and pine cones. Simple, peaceful. I took a deep breath. Eli kicked his legs, eager to be out of the car seat. His joy was contagious, and I let it carry me to the front steps. Before I could even knock, the door opened. My dad stood there. I was hoping you'd come. Inside, the living room was full but calmer. Josh and Lauren were there, their kids in matching socks sprawled across the rug, building something elaborate with blocks. My mother was in the kitchen, humming softly, no longer the rigid host, but just, Mom. Greg hovered awkwardly near the doorway, but gave me a small wave. Eli squealed as soon as he saw the kids. I set him down, and he crawled straight into their chaos like he'd always belonged. Funny how kids don't carry baggage. They just move toward warmth. Everyone else had the grace not to rush me. I stood by the coat rack, still half holding my breath, until my mother walked over, holding a mug of hot cider. For you, she said, not forcing a smile, just offering it gently. I took it. We sat at the dining table, watching the kids play. She glanced over at me. You okay? Better than yesterday, I answered. I know we can't undo it all, but we're trying, Lena. Really? I nodded slowly. Trying matters. Greg wandered over, a tentative look on his face. Hey, I brought this. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a small wrapped package. It's not much, but it's for Eli. I opened it. A little plush fox, handmade. I blinked. You made this? I sewed the eyes on at least. Lauren did the rest. I wanted to contribute. I looked at him. He'll love it. I hope so. He paused, then added, I also sent something to your email. I talked to the travel agency. Tried to recover what I tore up. They said they'll see what they can do. That caught me off guard. I didn't expect that. I know. I didn't expect to regret things as hard as I do either. I gave him a long look. Then keep showing up. That matters more than fixing paper. He nodded. The doorbell rang just then and everyone paused. Josh got up and opened the door. Andrew stood there, holding a gift bag. The room went silent. Eli didn't notice. He was too busy chewing on a plastic spoon like it was gourmet cuisine. Andrew looked around, awkward in the doorway. I wasn't sure if I should come. My dad stepped forward. We didn't invite you. Andrew hesitated. Lena didn't return my call. I just wanted to bring something for Eli. That's all. I stood. It's okay, I said quietly. You can come in, just for a moment. He entered, unsure, scanning faces. Nobody welcomed him, but nobody stopped him either. He walked toward me and handed me the gift bag. It's a memory book, he said. Pictures I had stored on my old phone, from when he was born, some ultrasounds. I never gave them to you. I looked inside. Pages of moments I'd thought were lost. Eli in the hospital bassinet, his tiny hand gripping my finger. A photo of me asleep on the couch holding him, taken without me knowing. You kept these? I asked, stunned. I didn't know how to give them to you, not after everything, I exhaled. Thank you. I'm sorry, Lena, for everything I didn't do, for the time I didn't make. I can't fix it all, but if I can be better now, I'd like to try. I looked at Eli, then back at Andrew. I won't make him wait to be loved, I said. So if you're going to be here, you show up, all in. No more excuses. Andrew nodded. I can do that. I wasn't sure if I believed him yet. But I believed in giving Eli every good thing, even if that meant allowing his father to prove himself. The night passed slower after that. No dramatic speeches, no forced apologies, just a quiet sort of stitching happening around the table. Josh brought out the food. My mom made way too many sides, and we ate crowded together, bumping elbows and laughing at nothing. It was the kind of laughter that feels a little rusty but real. Later, Eli curled up next to my mom on the couch and fell asleep, fingers still gripping the fox toy. Greg gave him. I watched him sleep, heart steady. This wasn't the Thanksgiving I expected. It was better. Not because it was perfect, but because it was finally real. Winter didn't ask permission that year. It came crashing in with frozen rain and glassy sidewalks, the kind that forced you to slow down whether you wanted to or not. And maybe that was fitting, because slowing down was the only way I could make sense of everything that had happened in the last few days. I didn't see my family every day after Thanksgiving, but the energy had shifted. The air between us was no longer stiff with blame or distance. It was tentative, yes, but open. We were all learning how to take up space in each other's lives again, without stepping on old wounds. Even Andrew, he started calling twice a week. Not to talk to me really, but to check in on Eli. Sometimes he'd ask how I was doing too, but he never lingered in the answers, which was fine by me. He showed up that first weekend with a bag of diapers and a small set of building blocks, awkward like a rookie dad on his first mission. And honestly, that's exactly what he was. I didn't trust it right away. One diaper run doesn't erase years of absence. One warm phone call can't rewind time. But I watched him carefully, not waiting for him to fail, just needing to see if his actions were rooted this time. Not just reactions to guilt. That was the difference after all. Guilt fades. Real growth sticks. One afternoon, Eli toddled across the living room floor, took one clumsy step too many, and landed right on his bottom. He didn't cry. He looked around, confused, like, did anyone see that? Andrew happened to be nearby. He scooped him up and whispered, "You're good, buddy. Just try again." And that moment, it was simple. but something about the way he said it, calm and steady it felt, earned. Still, I couldn't help the wall inside me. The one that went up during all the nights I cried alone holding Eli to my chest, wondering if I'd made a mistake or if I'd ever feel whole again. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just cautious. There's a difference between letting someone back in and giving them the keys. One afternoon, I was folding laundry while Eli napped. The living room was quiet, save for the hum of the heater and the low murmur of a playlist I forgot I'd put on. I was halfway through matching socks when my phone buzzed. Text from Greg. Want to do dinner at our place Friday? Just us. I'll cook Lauren's scared lol. Bring Eli. I stared at the message for a while, thumb hovering. Then I typed back, sure. If you're actually cooking, I'll bring the fire extinguisher. That was our way now. Laughter first. Apologies behind us. Actions forward. When Friday came, Eli and I bundled up and made our way to Greg's place. Their townhouse was warm and full of the smell of garlic and burnt toast, because of course he tried to make breadsticks from scratch. Eli was passed between laps and stuffed with tiny spoonfuls of mashed potatoes. He giggled until he had the hiccups. Watching him there, surrounded by a family that once turned its back on us, felt like watching a wound scar over not erased, but healed enough to touch. After dinner, Greg pulled me aside. Hey, so about Christmas. The first raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you're playing Santa this year. He laughed. Please, no. But I was wondering if we could all do Christmas morning together. At Mom and Dad's. I blinked. Together? Like, all of us? He nodded. Yeah, all of us. No signs, no lines drawn. Just a real normal Christmas. I hesitated. I get it, he added quickly. If it's too much, just say so. No pressure. But we'd really like you there. Eli, too. Mom already bought a stocking with his name on it. I felt something tighten in my chest, then slowly unravel. Let me think about it, I said honestly. That night, back home, I sat on the couch while Eli slept, flipping through the memory book Andrew had given me. Each page was a reminder of moments we never shared together, and yet were both a part of. There was a photo of me in the hospital bed, hair plastered to my forehead, holding a squirming newborn. Andrew had captioned it in messy handwriting. She was exhausted, but she still smiled. I touched the edge of the page and closed the book. Some things can't be undone, but they can be understood. A few days later, I was picking Eli up from daycare when the teacher handed me something. A crayon drawing, just scribbles mostly. But she smiled and said, he kept saying da-da. Thought you'd want to know. I looked at the paper again. Just crooked blue lines and a half moon of orange where Eli had pressed the crayon so hard it tore through. And yet, I knew what it meant. Eli was starting to notice the space where his father should be, and Andrew was finally stepping into it. That night, I called him. You around next weekend? I asked. For Eli? He said quickly. Yes. I was thinking maybe you join us for the park, if you want. I'd like that, he said. Thank you. It wasn't some cinematic breakthrough, but it felt right. We met that Saturday at the park near the old library. Andrew showed up early, holding a thermos of coffee and wearing the same scarf. I gave him 2 Christmases before our divorce. He didn't mention it. Neither did I. We walked slowly, Eli in his stroller, bundled like a snowball. It was the first time in a long time we'd stood side by side without sharp words or silence. I've been in therapy, Andrew said out of nowhere, trying to figure out why I was such an absent husband. An absent father. I didn't say anything, just listened. I always told myself I was doing it for the future, working nonstop, staying late, missing flights. But the truth is, I was afraid of fatherhood, of not being good at it, of not being enough. I looked over at him. That's the thing, Andrew. None of us ever feels enough. We just show up anyway. He nodded slowly. I'm learning that now. We sat on a bench. Eli kicked his boots happily against the stroller frame, content with the simple joy of being outside. Andrew turned to me. I know I can't fix the past, but I want to earn a place in his future. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, start by showing up, not just for him, but as the version of yourself that doesn't run. He looked at me and nodded again, but this time with more weight behind it. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there, breathing the cold air, letting the world move around us. Sometimes peace doesn't come like thunder, it just shows up, quiet, steady, like footprints beside yours on a snowy path. Boston in December has this strange light about it, gray and silver, like the sky's always thinking. It makes you want to pause, breathe slower, notice things you usually rush past. And lately, I had been noticing small things. The way Eli reached for my hand every morning like he trusted it would always be there. The tiny shift in my mother's voice when she called, not to give advice, but just to say, "I miss you." Even Andrew, learning to sit still long enough to read a board book twice, even when Eli wandered off halfway through. None of it was big. But that's the thing. Healing never looks like fireworks. It's quieter than that. Steady. By mid-December, my apartment felt like a little world of its own, pine-scented, cluttered with toddler toys, and soft with laughter. Eli had learned how to say more, which he used for both food and cartoons, and, which he used way too often with sippy cups. One evening, I was folding laundry again, always laundry, when there was a knock at the door. This time, it wasn't my family or Andrew. It was Josh. Alone. I hadn't seen him without Lauren or the kids in years. He stood there in a puffer jacket, shifting on his feet like he hadn't planned what he was going to say. "Hey," he offered. "Hey," I replied, keeping the door open but my expectations closed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and handed it to me. I unfolded it, a drawing obviously done by one of his kids. It was stick figures, a tree with way too many ornaments, and a baby with what looked like spaghetti hair. "They made that for Eli," he said. "Said he should be in the Christmas picture." I looked at it for a long moment before letting him in. He stayed for 20 minutes. Didn't push, didn't ask for anything. He just sat on the floor with Eli, who tried to feed him a block like it was a cracker. Before leaving, Josh stood and looked at me. "I was wrong," he said. "You didn't destroy our family when you left Andrew. You saved yours." I was too proud to see that. I didn't say much back, just nodded. That was enough. Later that week, I got a message from Greg. "We've got room under the tree for you both. Come if you want, no pressure, no speeches, just us." Christmas morning came quietly. Snow had fallen the night before, covering everything in that clean hush that makes the world look softer than it is. Eli was too young to understand gifts, but he lit up when he saw the lights. I dressed him in a sweater with tiny trees on it and packed his favorite toy, a squishy duck that squeaked when squeezed. We arrived at my parents' house just as the kettles started to whistle. Inside, the tree was glowing in the corner, wrapped in mismatched ornaments collected over decades. The kind only a real family tree has, some handmade, some half-broken, but all remembered. No one made a big deal out of us arriving, and that was the best part. There was no apology wrapped in tinsel, no performance. Just coffee poured, coats hung, and Eli scooped up by my mother like he'd always belonged. We sat around the living room, passing gifts and memories. Andrew came, too, just for a little while. He sat quietly, held Eli when he could, and didn't make the moment about himself. That was new and appreciated. My father handed me a box small, wrapped in plain brown paper with a white ribbon. Inside was a photo of me as a baby, held in my mother's arms. Behind it, folded neatly, was a note in my dad's handwriting. "We didn't know how to love you the right way back then. Thank you for showing us how." I blinked fast, smiled without words, and slipped the note into my coat pocket. Later that afternoon, we all took a walk down the block, just to breathe. Eli rode in his stroller, cheeks red from the cold, eyes wide at every falling snowflake. At one point, he pointed at the sky and shouted something I couldn't quite understand, but it made us all laugh, even my father. That night, back at the apartment, Eli fell asleep fast, his body warm and heavy in my arms as I carried him to his crib. I stood there for a while, watching him breathe. Then I turned to the window and looked out at the city, quiet and blanketed in white. This wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but it was ours. I'd spent so long mourning what I lost: expectations, comfort, even belonging. But what I had now? It was stronger than all of that. It was earned. It wasn't that my family had suddenly become perfect. They hadn't. But they were learning to listen, to hold space, to show love in ways that mattered, not just ways that looked good on paper. And maybe, for now, that was enough. A few days later, I took out the old envelope, the one I thought I'd never see again. Greg had tried to reconstruct it with help from the agency. It wasn't perfect, some things had expired, but others had been reissued. I held it in my hands and smiled. I didn't need to give it back to them again. They didn't need grand gestures. What they needed, what we needed, was consistency, presence, a seat at the table that stayed open even if things got messy. As the new year approached, I didn't make resolutions. I just made promises. To Eli, to myself, that we would live in truth, not performance, that we would forgive without forgetting, that we would build something strong brick by brick with whatever we had left, and most of all, that no matter what came next, we would always come home to each other. Because this little life, stitched together by choice and grit and the tiniest bits of grace, was enough. More than enough. Story 2. On a Boston winter day, dusk arrived early. The windows of the office building showed that light snow had started to fall on the streets. Caroline Miller stood by the window, looking out over her village in the distance. Although it had been a while since she had left the city, she had briefly returned to Boston following her triumph in Chicago. "The final report is ready, Miss Miller." When she heard the voice of her youthful coworker, Caroline smiled professionally as she turned. "I'm grateful, Jason. I'll go over everything again before the last presentation tomorrow." She spoke with poise and assurance that came from years of working as a financial analyst. Caroline was a master at deciphering the meaning behind the statistics. She had a natural aptitude for it. Caroline's mobile phone rang as she was leaving the workplace and heading back to her opulent apartment. She hesitated for a bit before responding when the word "mother" showed on the screen. "Hello, Mother. Where are you now, Carrie? Brenda and I scheduled a meal. Recently, we haven't had a meaningful chat with you." Elena's voice was light as usual. "I apologize, Mother. I am unable to do so today. Tomorrow, I have a crucial presentation. Return to work?" Elena's voice was obviously laced with disappointment. "Work, and more work with you. Are you aware of Brenda's intense desire to see you?" Caroline inhaled deeply and closed her eyes. "Okay, what about tomorrow night? After my presentation, I can find time." Caroline hung up and gazed out the cab window. Her familial ties were the source of the uneasiness she had every time she went back to Boston. Basking in their mother's love, her sister Brenda was the family's brightness. Despite being siblings, Caroline, who was characterized as two-handed and uninteresting, was quite different from her outgoing sister, who lived a glamorous lifestyle. Since she started working in Chicago, Caroline's family has consistently called her a workaholic, especially since college. The gap had widened much further. It went beyond just physical separation. Caroline returned to her apartment and looked out the wide living room window at the night sky. Her engagement ring, which gleamed on her left ring finger, was proof of her recent happiness. Her life had altered when she met Michael Hudson. They had first met a year prior when she was given the responsibility of consulting for Hudson Furniture, his family's well-established furniture manufacturing business. With more than a century of existence, this corporation was in difficulty because of the current recession. Caroline was interested in the company's history and the lives of its employees in addition to examining its financial status. Caroline was different from the typical consultant who would have recommended asset sales and personnel cutbacks. She suggested creative tactics that uphold the business's core principles while accommodating contemporary demands. Without alerting anybody, she put her everything into this task. Her strategy of recognizing people's lives beyond the numbers greatly pleased Michael. After starting off as business colleagues, their friendship soon developed into love. Caroline was enthralled with his honesty and enthusiasm, while Michael admired her generosity and brilliance. Her mother and sister's responses upon learning of the engagement were surprising. In her mother's eyes came the calculating gleam of Michael Hudson of that furniture firm. "You finally caught a monster fish, Corey. Excellent work," claims that Brenda's tone was sarcastic. "You've consistently made wise financial decisions." Caroline was stung by these remarks, but she remained silent. She was aware that they wouldn't comprehend that Michael's importance to her was unrelated to his family's money. In her apartment's silence, as Caroline went over the presentation materials for tomorrow, she reflected. The attitude of her family, particularly her sister Brenda, who continued asking odd questions while her mother Eleanor affirmed, made her uneasy as the wedding preparations went on. "Are you truly in love with Michael?" She stood at the window and closed the materials. In the far sky, a few stars were twinkling. Caroline inhaled deeply to help her relax. Tomorrow was a significant day. A client presentation and an evening meal with her family. Michael's name appeared on her cell phone when it rang. Caroline's face lit up with a spontaneous smile. The only thing that brought her real comfort in the city was talking to him. "How do you feel about this?" The bouquet of flowers made Caroline smile. She was shown by the wedding coordinator that the tasteful arrangement of baby's breath and white roses was nearly exactly what she had envisioned. "It's beautiful. Let's proceed." The wedding was just 2 months away, and the preparations were going well. Michael suggested holding the event at a historic home in the Boston suburbs. Beautiful flowers would beautify the garden, which had been passed down through his family's centuries. When springtime came, Caroline left the wedding planner and went to see her mother. More than ever, Eleanor Miller had expressed interest in her daughter's wedding. It wasn't a nice interest, though. Her mother was already seated when she walked into the fancy restaurant. Brenda was standing next to Eleanor as well. Prior to Caroline's arrival, the two appeared to be engaged in a lengthy conversation, which ended abruptly when she came up to Carrie. "You're running late." As she kissed her daughter's cheek, Eleanor spoke. "Have you made up your mind about your wedding gown yet?" Caroline sat down and said, "Yes, I went for a fitting last week." "The design is sleek and straightforward." "Easy," Brenda scowled. "As the Hudson family's bride, shouldn't you choose for something more lavish?" To fulfill their demands. For a minute, Caroline could not think of anything to say. "My clothing was admired by Michael." "You're quite fortunate," her mom cut her off, "to have a man like Michael pick you. What is the value of his family?" "Mom," Caroline said more softly, "I'm in love with Michael. It is not related to money." Brenda and Eleanor looked at each other intently. "Naturally, Carrie," taking her daughter's hand, Eleanor spoke. "However, are you truly in love with Michael?" Her mother has been asking this question a lot lately. As if to be sure, she asked it in the same tone each time. "I've said it several times," Caroline said, stifling her annoyance. "Of course I love him." "But you do speak about work all the time, don't you?" With her wine glass tilted, Brenda spoke. "What role will you have at Michael's business? Will you become a manager? We haven't talked about that." "My workplace is in Chicago." "What? After marriage, you don't intend to live apart, do you?" Brenda acted like she was taken aback. "So what's the purpose of marriage?" Caroline inhaled deeply. "We're still talking about it. Michael's company is here, and he is linked to Boston. I also can't just up and leave my job in Chicago. But you'll do what he wants in the end, won't you?" Her mother gave her a deep grin. "As the Hudson family's wife, that is your responsibility." Caroline was no longer able to argue. "Could you look at this, Caroline?" Going to Michael's workplace. Caroline studied the papers. He dispersed. It was a brand new Hudson furniture business strategy. Michael's plan included more modern designs and eco-friendly materials, while preserving conventional furniture production methods. "Michael, this is incredible. It will be a significant change." "It's all because of your guidance." Michael grasped her hand. "I'm thrilled that we can work together to shape the company's future." Caroline could forget the awkward talks she had with her family as she looked into his genuine eyes. Michael admired her skills and appreciated her views. Another wedding-related item. Michael's face took on an air of mystery. "I have a surprise planned. I apologize. I am unable to show it to you just yet. Unexpected." Caroline's head cocked. "Don't you have a clue for me?" "It wouldn't be shocking then," Michael chuckled. "I can tell you one thing, though. I want more people to know you, particularly your family." Caroline was perplexed. "My relatives. I'm a little worried about their perception of you." Michael spoke softly. "They don't seem to get who you really are, based on what you've told me," Caroline said in a low voice. "Yes. However, that has long been the case. I'm accustomed to it. It shouldn't take any getting used to." Michael spoke firmly but gently. "You should be given more credit." Even after leaving Michael's office, Caroline's heart was still troubled by his words. Caroline was in a hotel room the night before the wedding, making last-minute arrangements. Tomorrow, Tim table, seating arrangements and the guest list. Everything appeared ideal, but she was filled with anxiety. She had unintentionally overheard Brenda's reckless phone call a few days prior. Tomorrow will be fun. Her sister's voice had a malicious tone. I can't wait to see Carrie's face when everyone realizes she's just after Michael's money. Even now, remembering those words hurt. Caroline had suffered from her family's misunderstandings for years. She had pursued a career in finance, not because she wanted money itself, but because she found joy in unraveling the stories behind the numbers. And she loved Michael not for his wealth, but for his kindness, sincerity, and his recognition of her value. The phone rang with Michael's name on the display. Nervous? His voice was warm and reassuring. A little, Caroline answered honestly. Tomorrow will be the best day, Michael said, and everything will become clear. What will become clear? It will be the day everyone learns what a wonderful person you are. Michael's words stayed with Caroline even after she hung up. He seemed to be planning something special. Despite the mixed feelings of anxiety and anticipation, she resolved to focus on tomorrow's happy occasion. Whatever happened, tomorrow would be Michael and her day. Not even her family's misunderstandings could take that joy away. Spring sunshine gently embraced the historic estate in the Boston suburbs. A white tent had been set up in the garden, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light. Upon hearing of the bride's arrival, guests turned with expectant faces. Caroline walked down the aisle, strewn with rose petals, her hand resting on her father's arm. Her dress was simple yet elegant, with delicate lace patterns that sparkled in the sunlight. At the end of the aisle, Michael waited for her. His eyes held deep affection, and his gaze was warm as he looked at Caroline. The ceremony was solemn and heartwarming. After exchanging vows, the newlyweds headed to the reception hall, amid the blessings of their guests. In the elaborately decorated hall, champagne flowed and laughter echoed everywhere. Caroline felt true happiness for the first time in her life. Michael's hand firmly held hers, its warmth giving her reassurance as the celebration reached its peak. The MC took the microphone. Now we'd like to hear a speech from the bride's sister, Brenda Miller. As the venue fell silent, Brenda stood up, dressed in a flashy emerald green dress. She accepted the microphone with a confident smile. Caroline maintained her smile despite feeling a small twinge of anxiety. Everyone, we've gathered today for my sister Caroline, Brenda began in a bright voice. But to be honest, Corey, I never thought you'd see this day. Small laughter rippled through the venue. Caroline gave a wry smile. My sister has always been serious and sensible. Since college, she's been completely devoted to studying and working. Brenda paused momentarily, then changed her tone. Actually, everyone, my sister has always been after rich men. She decided to enter the financial industry since college, and this marriage is just another attempt to get money. The venue erupted in laughter. Many guests seemed to take it as a joke between sisters, but pain shot through Caroline's chest. She looked at Michael, whose expression was hard, as if he was thinking about something. Since her teens, Corey always said, I'm going to marry the CEO of a top company, Brenda continued cheerfully. And look, she's finally fulfilled her dream. Caroline wore a frozen smile. All of Brenda's words were lies. What she had dreamed of as a teenager was contributing to society with her talents, not marrying a rich man. Suddenly, her mother, Eleanor, stood up, raising her champagne glass high. Well done, you gold digger. You finally succeeded. The atmosphere in the venue froze for a moment. Caroline's close friends looked confused, and Michael's family exchanged uncomfortable glances. However, many guests laughed it off as a joke and continued their conversations. Caroline sat rigid in her seat. Her cheeks flushed red and tears welled in her eyes. She had endured misunderstandings from her family for years, but never imagined being exposed to this way in public on the most important day of her life. At that moment, Michael slowly stood up. There was dignity in his posture, and the venue's attention turned to him. Is that really true? Michael's voice was quiet but carried a power that resonated throughout the venue. Brenda and Eleanor looked surprised by the sudden intervention. "I'd like everyone to see who Caroline really is." Michael pointed to a screen at the back of the hall. At his signal, the venue lights dimmed and images appeared on the large screen. The first footage showed Hudson Furniture's founding anniversary party. Caroline was seen talking amicably with Michael and other employees. She was speaking passionately about the company's community support project, and it was clear the employees were impressed by her ideas. The scene changed to a business magazine interview featuring Hudson Furniture as of this year's most innovative company revival. Caroline appeared as an anonymous strategic advisor, discussing the company's values and management philosophy that prioritized employees. When the interviewer asked Michael, "What's the secret behind this remarkable recovery?" he answered with a sincere expression, "Without her presence, this company wouldn't exist today." Her ability to not only analyze finances, but also recognize the value of each employee and harmonize tradition with innovation is invaluable beyond words. The venue was silent. Finally, graphs and charts showing the company's performance were displayed. They showed the trajectory of a company on the brink of bankruptcy returning to industry leadership. Each turning point noted Caroline's innovative ideas. The final slide read, "Caroline's value to Hudson Furniture incalculable," along with a collection of warm moments of her interacting with employees and customers. When the video ended, a deep silence spread across the venue. Tears glistened in many visitors' eyes, and Michael's parents glanced at Caroline with proud looks. Brenda and Eleanor sat dumbfounded. Confusion and humiliation were obvious on their faces. Caroline was weeping too, but these weren't tears of embarrassment or grief. They were tears of intense emotion. She was extremely thankful that Michael had publicly honored her abilities and achievements in this way. Michael stood near Caroline and firmly gripped her hand. "This is the person I fell in love with," he stated gently but firmly. A genuine rescuer of Hudson Furniture, full of talent, intellect, and compassion. Warm applause erupted from the room surrounding Caroline and Michael. A circle of individuals who actually recognized her significance had formed. Brenda and Eleanor's strategy had utterly flopped. They had tried to criticize Carolina's marriage for money, but in truth, she was the precious one for Michael and his family. Michael seized the microphone again and began speaking gently. "What I'm going to tell you is something even Caroline doesn't know. The day she initially arrived to our firm, we were on the point of bankruptcy owing to her suggestion. Employee layoffs were averted and we mended our ties with the community. I didn't first understand why Mom worked so hard for us. When I learned that it was because she valued giving people purpose in life rather than celebrity or fortune," Michael went on, his voice a little stifled, "she captured my heart." A surge of intense feeling swept across the space. After wiping away her tears, Caroline got to her feet and leaned into Michael's embrace. Caroline stood next to Michael when he grasped her hand. Pride and affection were shining in his eyes. "My life changed when I met Caroline." He started talking softly while scanning the room. With 3 generations of history, Hudson Furniture was on the verge of closing its doors due to the economic slump when she first came to see us. As a final resort, we had requested her to do a financial analysis. Michael grinned a little. A typical consultant would have suggested personnel reductions and asset sales. That's exactly what other experts did. Caroline, however, was unique. Behind the data, she saw the tales of individuals. Caroline's face flushed a little. Michael tightened his hold on her hand. She developed a rehabilitation plan that went beyond a simple financial plan. Its goal was to preserve people's dignity and lives. Her suggestion allowed us to revamp the business without letting go of any workers. I initially didn't see why she was so committed. Michael inhaled deeply. When she declined incentives and other rewards, I was genuinely perplexed. I found out later that Caroline's granddad had been a young worker at our plant. In order to safeguard workers during a recession, my grandpa at the time invested his own riches. That allowed her father to attend college and Caroline's grandfather to keep providing for his family. A faint mutter arose from the space. Caroline's eyes were filled with tears. She had never shared the story with anybody. She wanted to return the favor by saving lives and doing the same for others. Her preference for making people's lives meaningful over monetary gains struck a deep chord with me. Michael looked tenderly at Caroline, drawn to her keen intelligence and kind nature. She captured my heart. Caroline not only saved the firm, but she also altered my life's purpose. A surge of intense feeling swept across the space. Caroline's friends expressed a mixture of happiness that she was now being recognized and rage at her years of miscommunication. Brenda and Eleanor, meantime, remained dumbfounded on their chairs. Their expressions were filled with remorse and embarrassment. Both of Michael's parents got up and went to Caroline. Michael's father, Joseph, was a respectable old guy. He grasped Caroline's two hands. "We are grateful that you saved our family and business." There was thankfulness in his voice. "You are a benefactor who has safeguarded our heritage in addition to becoming my son's bride." Michael's mother, Elizabeth, gave her a kind embrace. "Having you as a member of our family brings me the most joy." Caroline picked up the microphone and wiped away her tears. Something inside her heart felt like it was being unleashed. Her long-suppressed thoughts were now coming to life. "Thank you, Michael," she said, her voice shaking. "And I want to thank everyone for coming today." Caroline inhaled deeply. "I had long since given up on getting my worth acknowledged. I've been called dull and overly responsible since I was a kid, and I was called a workaholic after graduation." For a moment, she looked at Brenda and her mother. "I endured years of familial miscommunications without ever putting it into words. Not for the money, but because I enjoyed solving problems and finding joy in my job, I was enthusiastic about it. Deciphering the story behind the statistics gave me purpose." Caroline's voice became louder with time. "It wasn't until I met Michael that I realized how valuable I really was. He valued and respected my work and thought processes, not considering them dull or uninteresting." She looked at Michael tenderly. "I finally understand what genuine love is for the first time in my life. It's acknowledging the value of the other person and embracing them for who they are." Caroline looked around the entire space. "Blood ties aren't the only aspect of family. Michael is family to me, his parents and all the employees of the business. They recognized me for who I truly am." Then she plucked up the strength to turn to face Brenda and her mother. The two were unable to look up. "However, Mom, I shall always adore you, Brenda. I'm hoping this presents an opportunity for us to start a fresh relationship." Caroline gestured as though she was reaching out. "I want the true myself to be known to you." There was silence in the room. Many of the guests' eyes glistened with tears. Eleanor's shoulders shook a little, indicating that she was crying quietly. Brenda looked at her sister, her face lifted. She had a regretful, sad expression that had never been seen before. Eleanor got to her feet slowly. Despite her apparent unsteadiness, she approached Caroline Carey one step at a time. Her voice faltered. "I apologize. Really? I apologize." Caroline approached her mother and gave her a hug. Eleanor burst into tears and buried her face in her daughter's shoulder. "I was mistaken." Eleanor sobbed as she said, "I never tried to see your value." Brenda came slowly, too. Her eyes were filled with regret and embarrassment. She stammered over her words, "Sis." Caroline reached out and gave her sister a hug in front of the three, remained in that position for a while. In this moment, years of miscommunications and hurt were starting to fade. Michael came over and touched Caroline's shoulder. His eyes were filled with deep affection. "I wanted this," silently he said. "I wanted everyone to understand how valuable you are." Caroline grinned. She smiled with a brightness that had never been there before. As though released from a long-standing burden, there was a sense of lightness. Warm applause reverberated as the music started to flow through the venue once more. The celebration went on, and people started talking again, but something had changed drastically. Caroline had undergone a transformation. She had, for the first time, discovered her position in society and in her family. Many of the attendees would later remark that this wedding was a profound and transformative event. It evolved from a celebration of two people's marriage to a unique moment where a lady discovered who she really was and was accepted by everyone. Caroline's face lit up with calm excitement as she and Michael stood on the dance floor and started their first dance. A group of individuals who genuinely valued her had gathered around her, and she felt for the first time that this was her place. The house in the Boston suburb had big windows that let in springtime sunlight. Caroline smiled, clutching a steaming coffee and watching the well-manicured garden. After a year of marriage, her life with Michael had grown more satisfying than they had ever dreamed. Finished reading the documents, Michael stepped out of the study and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Yes, everything's ready." Caroline smiled at her husband. Today's announcement will be exceptional. Not only did they jointly run the firm, but they had also developed a new initiative called Hudson Scholars. This initiative, which provided business instruction and practical possibilities for economically disadvantaged young people, was their most prideful project. "Has Brenda gotten back to you?" Michael inquired. "Yes, we'll be there, even if she'll be a little late." There was a tenderness in Caroline's words toward her sister that had not been there before. Brenda had given her actions a lot of thought after the wedding event, and she started seeing to a psychologist. Brenda recently volunteered for the scholarship program in an effort to gradually mend her relationship with Caroline after realizing that her behaviors were motivated by poor self-esteem and envy toward her sister. She had started to recognize her own genuine abilities. Caroline's mother, Eleanor, was waiting for her when the doorbell rang. In her arms was a handmade apple pie. "Mom, you arrived!" Caroline gave her mom a hug. Eleanor had shut off communication for a while after the wedding due to embarrassment. But a few months later, Caroline hurried to aid without hesitation when she was unexpectedly admitted to the hospital due to an illness. Eleanor's heart opened as a result of that committed treatment. Now that monthly family meals were a regular occurrence, they were starting to mend old wounds and form new bonds. "Today is a unique day. There was no way I could miss it." Eleanor gave a soft grin. Her eyes were filled with a fresh regard for her daughter. Young scholarship kids were having friendly conversations with Michael's parents in the living room. Beyond genetic connections, there was the warmth of actual family. At a little ceremony in the garden in the afternoon, important personnel of the firm were there, along with family and friends. The first Hudson Scholars scholarships were given out, and Caroline and Michael announced the program's formal debut. Brenda gave her sister a hard embrace when she came late. "You're very incredible, sis." There was genuine appreciation in her voice. "I'm happy to be able to help." That day, in the dusk of the evening, Caroline watched the sunset while standing by herself on the garden terrace. Michael wrapped his arm over her shoulders as he came up behind her. "What's on your mind?" Gently, he inquired. "Joy?" Caroline gave a heartfelt response. "The joy that comes from being myself with her." The people who really knew how valuable she was had assembled. She was at the heart of a new family circle that had emerged after old disputes had been resolved. Caroline gave a modest smile. After a long journey, she had come to the realization that family is not based on biological connections, but rather on mutual understanding, appreciation, and unconditional love.